We are Makilala TV, the first Filipino-American TV talk show in the New York metro area. Get to know us as we talk to the community leaders, innovators, advocates, and emerging artists who affect Filipino-American life.
Not being able to have a child or not wanting to have a child just yet. These are some age-old questions related to fertility. Octomom Nadia Suleiman did not seem to have either of these conditions. In early 2000, she had 6 in vitro pregnancies. And in 2008, her doctor transferred her remaining embryos and she gave birth to octuplets. While the world was consuming her sensational story, it did not help some of us understand what goes on during in vitro and why some women would have their eggs frozen. There's still a lot of shame associated with needing medical help for childbearing, with your body not working the same way you always assumed it would. The process is invasive, expensive, and stressful. Today, Makilala TV takes a fresh look into the issue of fertility with our guests who are willing to share their journey. Ashley Legg is a life artist, advocate for health, healer, and motivator, helping people create the life they love through mindful eating, movement, and passion for life. After years of trying to get pregnant, Ashley is now expecting her first child through in vitro and would like to share her story with other women who are trying to conceive. Justine Fonte is an educator, consultant, and speaker in intersectional health and sex education. She's a board member of Roots of Health, a reproductive health nonprofit in Palawan, Philippines. She will talk about the ethics and process of freezing eggs, which she embarked on recently. Today is going to be an interesting discussion. On behalf of my co-hosts, Rachelle Ocampo and Cristina Pastor, I am Jen Fiora and we welcome you to Makilala TV. So Ashley and Justine, welcome to Makilala.
Salamat.
So, reproductive choice, modern motherhood, egg freezing, in vitro. What can you tell us about it? We'll start with Justine.
Sure. It's definitely a journey, a big financial choice, a big emotional choice. And I don't regret the process of going through egg freezing. But it was, I learned a lot about myself. You learn a lot about yourself when you start having to inject something into your belly twice a day. So it was interesting, but one that I don't regret at all. And I feel a sense of security and calm in not having to rush any choices with my romantic life because I have this insurance policy in place now.
What about you, Ashley?
Just having the option of modern medicine is just so nice for my family because we had been battling a 4-year infertility journey. And at one point we felt hopeless. And when IVF came about and egg freezing, it really just gave us that sense of hope and security, like Justine said, to move forward and try for our family. And because we are pregnant, we're in our 9th month of pregnancy, it has made every shot worth it, every little prick worth it. And it is a hard journey. Definitely everything is invested, everything's on the line mentally and physically. But at the end of the day, it's helping us towards our goal of growing our family. And I couldn't be more happy to have this opportunity.
Well, those are amazing journey that you are willing to share for us. I mean, it looks like it's a happy moment, but I know there's like ups and downs. So I think maybe we'll start with Justine because half of the in vitro process that Ashley went through, I think, is retrieving the eggs. So not everyone has an easy journey doing what you guys did. So Justine.
Sure. I am really privileged to have had a fairly seamless process. And I know that that is a privilege because there were a lot of people that I first talked to about, you know, what it was like, what to expect, what my doctors not be telling me before I start this process. What are things you wish you knew before going into it, kind of thing. And it's not an easy journey for a lot of people, whether it be how they react to, you know, the medications in those 2 weeks, how they reacted after the actual harvesting day. your body is going to react in various ways, and you can interview as many people as possible, but everyone's body is different. And so I was really taking a gamble at figuring out, who is GMO Justine going to be after all of these shots in her system? Am I going to be someone people will want to hang out with in those 2 weeks? Maybe I got to clear off my social calendar for a little bit.
Justine,
yeah.
Can you tell us step by step what the process is like for you?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of steps, and it's very overwhelming, even after the consultation. But the Cliff Notes version of that is that you first get an ultrasound done to see what is the likelihood that you'll be able to get enough eggs on your first try. And so in that first ultrasound, my doctor had said, yep, you seem to be, you're 34 years old at the time, and it should be good to go. This is exactly the number of eggs that you should have at this age. And so I started the process by basically the second day of your period, which is like the real flow, not like spotting, but like your first real flow. You tell the fertility center, all right, day one has officially launched. And then you come in for an ultrasound, a blood test, and they start administering the drugs for you. So you have all these drugs at home, you have them all in the refrigerator, it looks like a pharmacy in your home. It's a little bit scary. You got needles everywhere. And you inject that first time at around 7 o'clock. There's usually a window of time every evening and every morning to do a certain type of medication. So I had my wall as a big calendar, because I didn't want to mess up the number of milligrams, the number of doses to put in every single time.
You inject it on yourself? Nobody does it for you?
Yourself, yeah. And because I had started this, during COVID era, there was a lot of limits in me being able to get my first administration with like my nurse or my doctor present in the clinic. So I am lucky to have a mother who's a physician. So I put her on FaceTime every single evening and had her there with my belly right in front of the camera. All right, Ma, here we go. And so I stabbed myself in there nice and slowly. And
how long did you go through this injection process?
It's 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks. So every morning, every evening, and then every other day for the first few days, you have to go into the clinic for another ultrasound and blood test to see where your hormone levels are at, and how the eggs are maturing or not. And yeah, I just needed the moral support of my mom and some of her technique to help me through it. But after that,
were you taking any vitamins?
No. The medications were pretty strong enough.
How about you, Ashley? I think your journey is maybe different than Justine, though.
Well, first I have to say, Justine, I give you some serious props for injecting yourself. I had my husband, and that was the job that I gave to him because I was just terrified to do it myself. You are a strong woman.
Terrifying.
Doing that. And, I got a little PTSD just hearing you talk about the process because it's a lot. And my journey started in last January, and the shots were really hard. I feel like the egg freezing process was actually one of the hardest parts because you don't know what to expect. And it's all coming down to your eggs and how many they retrieve. And then in our case, how many of them become embryos, which are AKA babies on ice. And so it was a long process for us. It was 12 weeks because we had to do the medications, like Justine said, leading up to the retrieval. And then we did genetics testing because we have like a confusing case in the sense that we're not diagnosed with anything. They couldn't really figure out what was wrong. We just weren't able to carry our child for full term. We had 4 miscarriages. We also went a full year without even being pregnant. And then we had multiple failed fertility treatments, IUIs, which is basically an insemination process where they would take my husband's sperm and they would inject it into me when I was ovulating. And we had to do that 4 times to even be considered as candidates for IVF. And those failed. And then we went into our first IVF, and this was like, this is it. This has to be our answer. And we did find out that we retrieved 17 eggs, which was pretty good for my age. I
Is that
was
a good number?
33. Yeah, a good
Okay.
starting number, because they say it goes down from there typically.
Mhm.
So then we had 12 of them that fertilized, and then
Oh.
8 of those survived past the 5 to 7 day of being frozen, waiting, and then those are our embryos. So we started with the 8, which we called the Great 8. And then in March we
Did you
had
ever, Ashley, did you ever consider surrogacy? Did that ever cross your mind?
in the beginning, I was against it, in the sense that I wanted so badly to go through this journey and to feel a baby inside me. I wanted to be the carrier. But when you're desperate and things aren't working, you start to open your mind to different possibilities. So surrogacy and adoption were definitely options, but that came over time through the pain and through the heartache and through those hopeless moments. And I'm very happy that I didn't have to go that route yet. And we do hope our next pregnancy is natural. That is our one wish. And if it's not, we'll go IVF. Or if my body is tired, because it is, I might.
How did it feel after losing?
They're praying for you.
Having 4 rainbow babies, as they call it. Then now that you're expecting to have a child, I mean, that must be like a plethora, like an explosion of emotion.
Honestly, I feel like until the 3rd trimester, I was still on edge all of the time. I feel so comforted by our baby right now, because I can feel him like moving. So he's giving me the strength. But just to suffer so many losses, it's a really hard and lonely time on yourself, on your partner. My marriage wasn't the best throughout this process, because we were both struggling. So we really had to lean on each other. So it feels really good. And I did want to say, though, our first, I know as we were talking about the transfers, is our first one didn't work. So that was like one misconception I think that people have about IVF, is that it's 100% guaranteed. And our first one failed in March at the start of the pandemic. And so that was one of our losses. And we did genetic testing on those embryos, because we wanted that more of a security that these were strong embryos that we could transfer, that potentially could become babies. And so that was hard, but right now I feel just blessed, beyond blessed, and I cannot wait to become a mom.
And Justine,
Go ahead, Rachelle.
Yeah, Justine, I just wanted to go back to when you were deciding to do this. You are a very proactive person. I know you, and I love you. You took the initiative to actually freeze your eggs and decide to embark on this journey by yourself. So what were the challenges of actually getting to that process? Is it really available to anyone and everyone?
I wish that was the case. I had thought of this when I was maybe when I was 28. I don't know. I was reading up about it, and I said, I wonder if that's something I should consider. And when I first talked to my doctor about it, she said, you're 28. Come back to me when you're 35. If you're still single, then we can maybe talk about it. And I said, what's magical about this number 35? So when I had ended a relationship and I was 34, I said, well, I'm almost 35. And maybe I should ask that question, ahead of time. And so when I asked the doctors, well, here's a list of people that you can start, doing some research on. So it was something I was already ready to embark on if I could financially make it happen. And it wasn't so much of like an ethical thing. I said, if I can afford to, get this insurance policy and feel empowered with, my reproductive choices, why wouldn't I do that? And so it was a really pretty simple decision. It was more of a matter of, can my bank account make it work? And so that's when I brought in my parents into the conversation, and they were fully in support of this. So the emotional part was a lot more tied to, this is going to cost $16,000. And
oh my God.
Some insurance policies will cover it.
Is this for the entire process, Justine?
For just my process. I'm not even pregnant. I don't plan to be for a bit. This is just to freeze eggs. Yeah. And so, some insurances will cover it. Some companies that you may work for will cover it if you're, in that privileged spot. But there are people that are paying out of pocket. And so this is not by any means an accessible process. It is really for the privileged. And so it was a huge decision for me because I didn't want to be possibly 39 and struggling like a lot of my friends who are in their, high 30s or low 40s. And so I said, well, if I can afford to do this and I have, I'm 34 years old, the number goes down drastically in viability after I turn 35. This is the time to do it. So it was kind of my birthday present to me before I turned 35 in December. And made it happen.
So now that the eggs are in the freezer, what's the next step?
What do you say?
Now that the eggs are in the freezer, what is the
my
next
next step is, for my process is to find a sperm donor via dating apps, So,
I think that's the hardest part.
I'm looking to, foster and cultivate a relationship that is the right one that will lead to a partnership. And ideally for me, that leads to marriage. And I hope to be able to not have to use those eggs because that's a whole another cut into my paycheck. But if I need to, if I'm struggling, if my partner's struggling, then I have this insurance policy that I invested in when I was 34 years old.
Well, Ashley, how much does in-vitro cost?
So all in for us, it was around $30,000, and that's with insurance. And we started working with our financial advisor, which I think is something that a lot of people my age don't think of yet. We started a year out knowing that this was going to be a big financial commitment and we wanted to make it work. And so that's what we did. So we prepared, and it's a lot though. Just like storing our eggs, we still have 6 left now, is about $1,000 a year. So there's always something being taxed on, and you just figure it out. We just had to make sacrifices and make it work because we wanted it, but it definitely is a big investment.
I have a question for Ashley. Why are we seeing a lot of twins being born these days? Is that caused by in vitro?
Yes, I think there are a lot of cases in that situation. I know I have some IVF friends that I met just through social media sharing our journey that actually implanted 2 eggs, which has risks in its own because even when you implant 1, that embryo could split and become 2. One of our former fertility treatments, I was developing so many eggs that they canceled the cycle because I had 5 strong eggs developing, and that could become 5 babies. So they were like, it's too risky.
Wow.
So our clinic in New Jersey, it's RMA of New Jersey, they don't opt to put in more than 1 embryo. They highly are against it. You can ultimately make that choice, but we just decided to go for 1 because at the time we weren't getting pregnant. So we didn't want to potentially waste a second embryo if the first one wasn't sticking already, so it was a choice of ours. But yeah, there's definitely, when you're injected with so many hormones,
that's right,
the possibilities. I've seen people have triplets and quadruplets. It's pretty fascinating.
I mean, Justine and Ashley both did research on where to go, the fertility clinics. I mean, what research? I mean, there's so much information out there. So how do you filter which is the best one? I mean, did you do interviews? Did you ask your friends?
For me, I trusted my gynecologist. She gave me a list of who she is comfortable referring her patients to, and I had only visited 2. So the first clinic I went to, I was really just gauging comfort level, really, and like bedside manner with the endocrinologist that I was speaking with, but then also just like the IVF staff, the nurses there, and everything. And I didn't like the first clinic that I went to because of how rushed I felt there and how incomplete they were in explaining things, especially around the financial process. And that's not something I want to feel when I know I'm going to be investing at least $16K. Right. So I was very selective with, I'm hypersensitive as, who is I going to spend, this 1 month with? And then so I went down the list and chose another center, and I really loved the doctor. And I loved her so much that I was like, I want my mom to be FaceTiming into this conversation because, with my mom's medical background, she could ask questions that I wouldn't even think to ask. And the fact that, this doctor was so patient with my mom's very many questions, which were all valid and great, gave me a sense of resolve that I was going to be well taken care of here.
Mhm.
And the staff was also very on top of it. And I felt not rushed, and, I can ask any questions I wanted. And that for me was my filter process to decide I'm going to do it at this place.
What about you, Ashley?
I was really open about my infertility journey on social media and with my friends and family. So I had a lot of recommendations when we decided to move forward with IVF. And I went with the first one. We had our consultation and we felt pretty safe and excited for the first time in a long time. We felt hopeful. So we went right for it. And to this day, I still talk to my doctor and my nurse, and they really care about our journey, and they were invested in it, and they never made our journey feel small, and they made it feel like it was worth fighting for. So we got really lucky. So I just recommend people just ask around, because I feel like if you know someone that had a good situation, at least you have a starting point, and then you can make your best decision. Like Justine said, like she knew that she wasn't going to go for the first clinic. She went for the second. It is really all about being comfortable and trusting other people with this journey.
And Ashley, what we've heard the term test tube baby. Is that term offensive to you?
I'm a little torn about it, because at this point I am just so thankful that there are opportunities like modern medicine.
Yeah.
And this is our journey, and this is what we had to do to make this happen. And, I support it, but I definitely feel like it's a little insensitive, because, some people don't have it easy, and I wish we could all have natural pregnancies, and we can't. So if this is the route we have to go to grow our family, then that's what it has to be. And I think it's just as important and special.
How do you deal with those people who can't accept that you're not going the natural route of motherhood?
I haven't experienced too many of those kind of people. I do open the door to a lot of communication, because I am so open. So I have a lot of people trying to give me advice from every angle and saying this is the right way, or people saying just relax, you'll get pregnant, or maybe you shouldn't work as much, stuff like that. And I just usually try to be as courteous as possible and say, thank you so much for your input, but this is our journey, and we are taking this as it comes, and we are listening to ourselves mentally and physically, and we're doing what's right for us. I do feel like sometimes I used to get jealous when people naturally get pregnant, and like the holidays were really hard for me, because that's where a lot of the birth announcements were. And for some people that would say, oh, I just looked at my husband and got pregnant. Those were like really hard for me to accept. So it's just, sometimes I would just step away. Sometimes I would journal and just write my feelings out, and just, be open with my partner and say, this bothered me. I don't know why I'm feeling like this, but it's just insensitive, and just, being really in tune with those emotions to just stay present where I was at in the moment.
I'd like to ask Justine about the ethics of egg freezing. Justine, has it ever occurred to you that there might be some ethical issues? You're healthy, but you're still going through a process that is kind of different.
I mean, I knew it's a healthy process to go through. There's very little risk in the medication that I would be taking, and I don't think that you need to be struggling in order to go through a certain process that means you're planning that for something you're planning for your future and your future health, and so there really wasn't much of an ethical debate for me at all. I was constantly thinking about, how inclusive a process like this could be if it was available financially for everyone. Because I think a lot of people reduce reproduction to a heterosexual relationship. And so the fact that we have modern medicine to really allow for people of any identities to want to be able to become a parent allows them to do so because of modern medicine. And the idea that, as Ashley was saying, all of the stigmatizing things that people were saying to her, well, just relax, or I just looked at my husband and I got pregnant. That's also very ageist to think, because not everyone is also trying when they are in their high 20s or low 30s. Some people are trying to get pregnant when they're 42. And they should be able to do that. And having this type of technology affords them that right. And that's why it's such an empowering process. I just want to figure out a way to make it financially accessible for people who are, not able to afford $16,000 for this. So in terms of ethics, I feel like it's almost more ethical because it allows more people to have a child when they are ready to have a child.
Being a sex educator, do you tell your students the other ways of reproductive?
Absolutely. I mean, a good sex educator should. I tell students there are different ways that a child can come into this world. And these are the three.
And these are young kids, like elementary or high school.
Yeah, exactly. So if I'm talking to even my elementary students, I tell them you need a sperm cell, you need an egg cell, and you need a uterus. It could come from two people. It could come from three very different people. But these are the three things that you need. And that means that language automatically is inclusive to same-sex families, for families who need a third person to help with, as a surrogate. But it's because I have diverse students who came into the world in a variety of different ways. Mm-hmm. And so, the term test tube baby, it's like the bottom line is we got a baby. And if they're going to be healthy, why do we need to put another label to it on how they got here when this is what technology is supposed to be able to do to empower people to family plan?
Justine, you're with Roots of Health, right?
Yes.
How is egg freezing being practiced in the Philippines? Is it common?
Honestly, I don't know about egg freezing in the Philippines because when my focus really on reproductive justice there is even just getting people to realize they have reproductive rights. And, in a developing country, I think it's difficult to have a conversation around something that costs $16,000 US. So I'm sure it exists. I would not be surprised if it is limited to only Manila and maybe Cebu. But it is definitely
people with means, right?
Yeah, people with means. Yeah.
And Justine, which quick question. So for your specific situation, your age, do you have like a certain cut point and like, hey, you know what? It's time. I don't have a guy. There's no one lined up. Is there like a tipping point for you?
I would say there was you mean in when someone should freeze?
No, that you should decide to actually use
it.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't thought that far
answer though, because coming to a close.
I haven't thought that far ahead yet. I mean, ideally, I wouldn't have to use egg freezing at all. But if I think for me, I don't know, 38, maybe 39.
And Ashley, can we just see your quick baby bump?
Yes. Don't mind my leggings because they're the only thing right now.
All right. Wow. Thank you. Well, that's it for our panel. Oh my goodness, there's so much more to talk about. Thank you so much. Ashley, Justine, we wish you all the best in this wonderful journey to motherhood, whatever direction you guys decide. And Ashley, I know you're expecting a baby soon, so please let us know when the baby shows up. To our viewers, thank you for inviting us to your homes. And remember to be kind, be true, be fierce, and do things that bring you joy. To the cast and crew, and to our guests, thank you so much for being here. Maraming salamat. Sa ulitin, until next time, here at Makilala TV.